Thank you, Chair. We're now streaming live on YouTube. Over to you when you're ready.
Thank you, Wendy. Right. It's like being in a seance, isn't it? Are you there? Right. We come to item 13, application 202701 FUL, minor application, 18 Hartley Road, Exmouth, page 129.
Chair, before we start the matters, could we possibly do a quick roll call for the public to know who's in the meeting this afternoon?
Yes, of course, Mrs. Shaw.
Okay.
Can we have a quick roll call, please, Wendy?
Yes, of course. So I'll
start
with you, Chair. So Councillor Wragg.
Yeah, present at Blackdown House.
Lovely. Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Present at Blackdown House.
Thank you. Councillor De Sarum.
Present at Blackdown House.
Councillor Gazzard.
Present Theatre of Dreams. Oh, sorry, present Blackdown House.
Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Present in Blackdown House.
Thank you. Councillor Key.
Present in Blackdown House.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Present at Blackdown House.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Present at Blackdown House.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Present at Blackdown House.
Thank you. Councillor Widley.
Present at Blackdown House.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Present at Blackdown House.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, could I just ask you to put your camera on, please?
Yeah, you got the good looking one back now, Wendy. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, page 129. Could I welcome Simon Antonio to the meeting and David McDermott, both of whom are objecting to this application. You will each have 3 minutes to speak after Mr. Rose has presented the application. Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this application is for construction of a dwelling. So right at the rear of this this long plot, and it's here because there's a ward member objection. Excuse me. So this this building has been converted into 7 flats, and they want a new dwelling at the rear, identical to 2 that are already at the rear, which will come clear from the photos. So this is the layout at the moment, and there's an amenity area at the back. So they want to build this 1-bed unit in the end of the existing terrace at the rear, if that makes sense. And here's the aerial of the site. So we've got the building coming down, and then we've got this amenity area, and they basically want to build another unit similar to these 2 on the end of it. This is the view from the street. As you can see, you won't be able to view the proposal from the street, and you can see the 2 units to the side here already. So basically they want to put another one on the end here. Very similar arrangement, identical design. And this is where they want that building to be. So continuing along the ridge here, similar layout, but using that amenity area. And you can see the relationship, how it's set down from the properties to the rear. Yeah. So in terms of the principle, it's in the built-up area boundary. So residential development is supported in principle. So then we come down to other considerations. In terms of the visual impact and impact on the character, as I've said, it's to the rear of the property, so you won't see it from the street scene, and you can see the wall at the rear. So there's no wider visual impact from the public domain. There is a loss of this amenity area to the side that members will need to consider, and you'll note that there's been objections received to the proposal on the basis it's considered to be overdevelopment of this plot, because it's pretty much going to take the footprint over the large extent of the plot and then just leave these areas to the front here as the amenity space. But in terms of amenity, the site is well located within walking distance of the beach and the other facilities at Exmouth. So that might make refusal of permission on the basis of the loss of the amenity area, and the smaller amenity area quite difficult. Also, bearing in mind the need and the benefit of smaller one-bed units and the need for that in Exmouth at the moment. In terms of impact on surrounding residents, there's no concern about the impact from the ground floor because it's looking back into the walls in the site. There are roof lights proposed at the upper floor, but that's just a high level and a window to an ensuite. So there will be no overlooking, no loss of light, no overshadowing. There's no parking proposed for the units, but again, as I mentioned, it's a well-located site, close to the beach, close to the town, and policies for such a small unit would allow the lack of a parking space. So understand the concerns of the objectors and the town council and the ward member. It is quite a, I don't know if I'd say cramped, but it's quite a tight development on the site. It is going to lose that amenity area. But without being able to identify any wider harm, given the good location of the site and given the need for these small units in Exmouth, on balance, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Mr. Antonio, are you there?
I am, yes.
Yeah, right. Welcome to the meeting. You have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. In my letter of objection, dated the 19th of February, I clearly set out the historical refusal of the previous applications to extend into the proposed site, with many reasons for those refusals, including overdevelopment, negative impact on the character of the property, the amenity of the neighbouring properties, and lack of amenity space for the occupants. These are all issues that the Planning Officer report published on the 27th of May now appears to dismiss. The report acknowledges that the site is very confined, but will not result in loss of privacy, and nor will there be a loss of residential amenity. I disagree with those opinions on the basis that the current outdoor space for flat 7 will be completely infilled, with the only remaining space being the bin and bike store. This is not an adequate replacement for the existing space, and it cannot therefore be considered that there is no loss of amenity. The report suggests that this isn't a problem, as there is public amenity space available close by. This view, however, gives no consideration at all to the age of the residents or those that may have mobility issues and who rely on the existing space for their well-being. I also disagree with the opinion that there is no loss of privacy. As highlighted in my letter of objection, the drawings submitted by the applicant are inaccurate and misleading. The drawing depicts a boundary wall between the site and my property extending to a height of over 4 metres. This is actually 2 metres higher than the wall is in reality. This incorrect drawing gives the appearance that the roof lights will not overlook my property. The report seems to be concluding that there will be no loss of privacy based on these inaccurate drawings. The note at the end of the report states that the application was deemed acceptable as submitted. After my letter of objection was submitted, a revised drawing was supplied, but it still includes the inaccuracies. It would therefore seem that this issue has not been fully considered. The roof lights, even with obscured glazing, can still be opened and will look directly onto my property from a close distance. This will clearly have a negative impact on my own amenity. The report states that the application would not be out of character with development in the area. Again, I would challenge this opinion. While some of the properties on Hartley Road are extended at the rear, none extend beyond the current building line of the existing dwelling. If approved, this proposal will set a sad precedent for other properties in the area to also extend in this way, resulting in a huge loss of green, outdoor space, and would be an unwelcome evolution of a residential area close to the town centre. Building on what limited green space remains and cramming one-bedroom flats into small plots such as this is not a sustainable solution. This proposal is not an extension to a family home. It is purely a rental-driven for-profit development that will have a significant negative impact on the neighbouring properties and those residents in the existing dwellings. The report concludes that there will be no harm to the surrounding residents. Hopefully, the points I've made here, as well as the history of refusal of the other proposals on the basis of overdevelopment, thank you, make it clear that there will be harm to the surrounding residents. The last year or so has clearly demonstrated the need for properties to have their own outdoor space to enjoy, and I urge you to agree with the ward councillor and reject the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonio. David McDermott, is he here?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Oh, right. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. McDermott. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'd like to back up the comments from Simon and Antonio just made on the combined plans. The wall to the northeast is in fact 2 metres high and not 4 as shown. So I agree that that gives a false sense of that there isn't a loss of amenity to number 6 Gutter Lane, Mr. Antonio's property. Referring to the planning report, it states that the proposed dwelling is located within a very confined area that is not considered to result in a loss of privacy, light, or have an overbearing impact. And it states that it considered that there is no loss of residential amenity. This is clearly wrong. The proposed development is taking the existing amenity from the existing building, and the remaining properties have very little, if any, amenity within the property. The planning report also goes on to say on page 6 that in terms of outside space, the site is located on the outskirts of Exmouth Town Centre, where there are a number of outdoor recreational areas within walking distance. Because of the fact it's the nearest park or the beach that it refers to is some 500 meters away, 10 to 15 minutes walk. And as Mr. Antonio said, these people who are likely to use this property would be elderly, and I hardly think that that is an adequate distance or replacement amenity to having a small garden. I note on the drawings that the existing clothesline, joint use clothesline, is being proposed to be replaced with a long line. There isn't enough space, amenity space within these units, even to put a small clothesline. So that gives a demonstration of how small this is and the lack of amenity that is provided. So it's with that regard that I recommend refusal of this application on the lack of amenity supplied and the amenity taken away by the existing dwelling, and to number 6.
30 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. Ward member, Councillor De Sarum, please.
Thank you, Chair. Is it all right if I speak in debate to allow as much time as necessary?
You speak now as ward member,
within
you can do as Councillor Pratt did
I won't take long. I just wanted to make sure that what I was going to say. So thank you, Chair. And I admit that this is a difficult one, because on the one hand, planning policy indicates at first glance that 1-bedroom properties are required, and that yes, Exmouth is in the built-up area boundary, and so this application should be approved as per the report recommendation. But on the other hand, it suggests no, because if we look at the design closely, it involves the loss of outdoor spaces, we've heard, and particularly at post-COVID, this is very important, especially because this proposal would extend into an area of the site which is recreational, as the occupier of number 7, clearly needs and values. I mean, if we look at the original maps, you can clearly see that the issue is that, as was mentioned, a precedent would be set by extending beyond the current building line, and that would be one of my main concerns. And also, I feel there's not enough to fit such space to fit such a proposal without it being cramped and out of keeping. As Mr. Rose said, it's a very tight development. Therefore, I feel that our response as a committee to this should be like the one we looked at on 201799 Fool in Victoria Road, which we looked at in April. And I'd argue that, as we said in April, that we should refuse this development by reason of its close proximity to the site boundaries, which would result in unacceptable relationship with the surrounding properties, with unduly harmful, overbearing, overdominant impact, which would be to the detriment of residential amenities of the occupiers of surrounding properties. Furthermore, I would argue that, in my thoughts, the proposal is contrary to D1 design and distinctiveness and para N131 of the NPPF. Therefore, Chair, I have now put forward the case as I see it, along with those who have objected, and I hope that I may find a seconder from amongst this committee to support such a proposal. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor De Sarum. Is there a seconder? Councillor Skinner. Thank you. Would you like to speak on it, Councillor Skinner?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've looked at this application, and I don't know if Mr. Rose, if I could ask you with the pictures to go to the one with where it's sort of outside next one. That one, no, back one. That's it, that one. I mean, wow. If that in overdevelopment, I don't know what is. So I find squeezing in a house here. I understand the development built up line and all the rest of it, and there's a dichotomy of which we seem to all fall into. we've got a site here whereby absolutely going to take up nearly every inch of what would be a bit of available space that you could walk outside your back door and at least have a little bit of a gap of something to when we do some barn conversions, we've got acres around it, we say, come up with sustainability and say we can't do that there because it's not quite right. The difference between the two is massive, isn't it? And here we are looking at this. I mean, it nearly, to me, it's impacting on the social structure and fabric of people's lives. When you're squeezing in a house in this particular or unit into this particular site is something that I find absolutely unacceptable. Of course, we're in built up areas. I get all of that, but to the point whereby they're so squeezed into somebody can't hardly walk outside the back door? No, absolutely not. This works absolutely on what some of the previous speakers have said regarding negative impact on the outside space. It absolutely does that. It's overdevelopment, in my opinion, is overdevelopment, and the extension beyond the existing building line is absolutely right. I just don't want to do that, and I think that's grounds for refusal. And I'm going to. So did you propose? You do. So I'm going to second. The motion through you, Madam Chair, of a refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I also support refusal, Chair, on the grounds of overdevelopment, out of character of the area, loss of amenity, and I think it's also contrary to EB2 of Exmouth's neighbourhood plan. So, and I'm also concerned about the access, should the emergency services need to get to this new development if it goes ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Yeah, very quick and short. I'm more than happy to support the refusal on this. For me, these days, it's more important than ever that we have some outside space. And it's not just that. The fact of the matter is, we should be airing our clothes out on an outside line wherever possible. Doing it inside just adds to damp conditions in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So for so many reasons, we need a tiny bit of space for the homes. And I just can't accept this is the right thing to do in removing this bit. So more than happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other speakers. So Councillor De Sarum and Councillor Gazzard have given policy reasons for refusal. So it's over to you, Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you. Councillor De Sarum spoke rather rapidly, so I'm just going to...
No.
I'm going to read what I believe he was meaning, but if he could please correct me for the record before we move to the vote. So the motion is to refuse the application for the reasons of its design, scale, height and bulk would create visually intrusive discordant feature within, no, it can't be within the street scene.
Unduly harmful and overbearing and overdominant impact to the detriment of other residential amenities of other occupying properties with the loss of outdoor space, basically, if we can sort of put that in.
Thank you very much, Councillor De Sarum.
Slow down.
Members, when your name is called, please would you indicate whether you are in support of the motion to refuse, whether you're against the motion to refuse, or whether you're abstaining from the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Shaw. Councillor Chamberlain.
I support the motion to refuse.
Thank you, Councillor De Sarum.
Support motion to refuse.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard.
Support refusal.
Councillor Howe.
Support refusal.
Councillor Key.
Support refusal.
Councillor Lawrence.
Support refusal.
Councillor Pratt.
Support refusal.
Councillor Skinner.
Support refusal.
Councillor Whibley.
Support refusal.
Councillor Ragg.
Support refusal.
Councillor Wright.
Support refusal.
Thank you. The vote to refuse has been carried.
Thank you. Right. Agenda item 10, application 2025R 2599 full land west of Lower Court Cottages, Fluxton, page 76. We have only one more member. Oh, two ward members to speak. Right, over to Chris Rose to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for demolition of an existing workshop and construction of a replacement workshop to include some roof-mounted solar panels. It's here because there's ward member concerns. So we've got the location of the site here, and you can see the red line is the footprint of the existing building. So the location of the existing replacement is proposed of identical size in terms of footprint and location on the site. This is the existing layout, so existing studio, you can see with a wood burner and workbenches and one partly open side. And this is the proposed, so very similar layout, as I say, identical size, but with some folding doors at the front. So you can see the existing elevation and then the proposed, and you can see the solar panels on the roof there. So these are the photos of the workshop at present. So there we can see partly some damage from storms occurred, as you can see, not in a great condition, and the applicant repairs various signs and does carpentry in like quite a small scale from the from the building. And then you can see the relationship with the surrounding gardens and back towards the main house, which is grade 2 listed. But the building is outside the curtilage of the dwelling, so there's no harm to the listed building. As I say, it was partly storm damage, so you can view it there, and then from the road you can probably just see it glimpse there behind the hedge and the tree, so it gives you the view in the context. So in terms of the principle that obviously the applicants put forward, there's a need to replace the existing building because it's damaged and of a poor condition, and needed to support his small scale carpentry and woodwork business. The replacement of the existing building because of its condition is a reasonable justification, supported by strategy 7 and policy E5. In terms of amenity, there's some potential to cause some noise, but there'll be really low levels historically. Environmental health have looked at the site. There's been no record of complaints. As I say, it's quite a low activity, and any noise within the building will be better contained because we've got a new building there without that partly open side. So from that point of view, there should be a benefit. In terms of the visual impact, as you can see here, it's just filtered views from the public highway. It's mainly screened by the trees and the hedges. There is a notable change to the building from the inclusion of some glazing to the front, but that's not considered to be harmful in itself, and neither is the inclusion of the solar panels on the roof, which obviously will bring other benefits. And as I mentioned, no harm to the setting of the listed building. So the need's been justified. There are benefits to the applicant from the improved building. There won't be any harm to amenity of neighbours. In fact, it should be improved by having this a newer, better built and enclosed building. There's no wider visual harm, so the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Faithful, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. The history of this building, as was explained to me, is that there was a caravan on the site, and then the building was built as a shell around the caravan with a resident living in the caravan, and then the caravan was taken away and the person still living in the caravan, and now you're having this building built on that same site, which my concern is whether where does a workshop studio stop being a workshop studio and start becoming a residence? How, if that can be slept in and lived in, how many nights a year or whatever? Where do you, if it's part of the house, how much can you spend sleeping in there and living in that building? Because you've got basically the facilities to live in that building when it's built. I know it doesn't look much there, but it's that is what has been that is the concern. So whether this is just needs about conditions within the building that goes up, that it's a workshop and it's not a residence or whatever. That is what the subject is. I hope that's clear or whatever.
Thank you, Councillor Faithful. I understand your concerns. Councillor Pratt, unlimited time.
Peter Faithful's concerns are dealt with, in fact, by Chris Rose in the proposed condition 4. The building hereby permitted shall not be used at any time other than for purposes ancillary to the residential use of the dwelling known as 1 Lower Court cottages. So I don't think really there should be any concern about this. I fully support this application. It's going to be used as a workshop, and I have no hesitation in proposing approval in support of the recommendation of the officer.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Tom Wright, you like to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. I understand Councillor Faithful's concerns, but what we got in front of us is an application for a workshop and shed. I had a garage in my last house and I put a toilet and facilities in that to save me having to keep going indoors. I don't think I ever slept in it, and I lived in that house for 17 years. So I think it would be a great asset. You can see he's putting solar roofs on, complete with a solar battery store. It'll make it a usable building throughout the year, rather than just when we've got warm, sunny weather. And I see absolutely no grounds to object at all. And I totally support Councillor Pratt's motion to approve. Thank you.
No, I'm absolutely agree. I think we can relatively move on fairly quickly. I fully support. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzard.
Nothing new to add, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, over to you, Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you. Members, you have one motion before you. That is to approve, subject to the conditions as listed in the report. When your name is called, please would you indicate whether you support the motion to approve, whether you're against the motion to approve, or whether you're abstaining from the vote.
Thank you, Mrs. Shaw. Councillor Chamberlain.
Approve with conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Desaran.
Approve with conditions.
Councillor Gazzard.
Support.
Councillor Howe.
Support.
Councillor Key.
Support.
Councillor Lawrence.
Support.
Councillor Pratt.
Support.
Councillor Skinner.
Support.
Councillor Whibley.
Support.
Councillor Ragg.
Support approval.
Councillor Wright.
Support.
Thank you. The vote to approve has been carried.
Thank you. And we move on to the last item, agenda item 12, application 202896, full land north of East Street Farms, Street Raleigh, Wimpole, page 116. And we have Simon Hart. Is he in the meeting? Can't see. Yes. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Hart. Over to Chris Rose to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for erection of a storage and workshop building and an office to facilitate the change of use of the land to commercial use. And the application's here because there's support from the ward member. So we've got the location of the site of Brickyard Road. It's part of a field up here. The photos will show it better. And we can see the proposed layout. So workshop and barn, office building, and stone crushed surface to this site. And then the proposing tree planting and landscape into this boundary, because you'll see from the photos, that's the boundary that's open. There's hedging and trees to the other boundaries. And there's a closer up view of the landscaping and the layout. So here's the storage and barn building and the elevations, and the office building on stilts because of the changes in the levels. Here's the access to the site and the road leading to the site. You note that they're fairly narrow, unlit, no pavements. And then we've got the activities going on the site. And then this is the view looking back that I mentioned, where there's the landscaping and planting. You can see some trees in, and so you can see back there towards the works on site, but you can also see the trees and screening to the remainder of the site. So Brickyard Lane, the site's outside of any built-up area boundary. It's an isolated location in the countryside, but quite near the A30 and the bank to it. There's a road to the south. The A30 is off to the north of the wooded embankment, and there's the woodland to the east, but this open view to the west. The storage building is about 18 meters by 9 meters at 6 meters high, and the office is 8 meters by 6 meters. And I mentioned that it's going to be hard surfaced. So turning to the principle of development, policy E5 is the relevant policy, and the justification put forward by the applicant, who is Heartwood Trees Limited. They're currently in Orliscombe, and they've advised that they need to leave their site because it's too small. There's no space to expand, and wanting to expand their staff numbers. And they have stated that this site has better access for them, it's closer to their staff, and will enable that expansion of the business. But as I mentioned, the site's outside any built-up area boundary. And in terms of policy E5, whilst that supports small-scale economic development in rural areas, it says on greenfield sites, which this is, the development needs to be well related in scale and form and sustainability terms to the village and surrounding area. Well, clearly this site is isolated and remote. There's limited buses, none that pass the site. It's not an attractive walk to any bus stops or the nearest services and facilities. There's limited pavements, no lighting. So there will be reliance on the car, and the site isn't therefore well located in scale and form and sustainability terms to a village or surrounding settlement. Saying that, there's adequate visibility at the access. There's no highway safety harm, and visually, with the landscaping proposed, that the site wouldn't be highly visible from the surrounding area. But you'll see in the report, our recommendation goes back to the local plan policy situation, that there's no planning policy support despite the lack of visual harm and lack of highway safety, because the policy says that these such uses should be directed to sustainable locations close to settlements and facilities. The reason for that being that we obviously don't want every business to go and buy a part of a field and relocate into the countryside, and that for sustainability terms, these uses should be located in or adjacent to settlements and a range of services and facilities. So given its isolated location in the countryside, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon Hart, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm absolutely passionate about our work and making our business the best it can be. My priorities are always higher standard of work and have happy, well looked after employees. In the last 4 years, we've gained the highest company accreditations available to us, and we are very fortunate to have won several large contracts. Because of this, we need to employ more people and to expand, and we desperately need a proper yard set up in the right location to do this. When we put in our application back in December, we promised we would employ 4 more people with the yard. We've now had to go ahead and employ 2 more, taking us to 10 full-time employees. We're working with Bicton College to find us an apprentice, and we would need a yard person too. I truly believe that East Devon planning officers have misunderstood our application, both in terms of the business and the yard itself. A large amount of what we do is considered agricultural. We've got tractors and trailers, handlers, agricultural mowing machines. We store large volumes of produce, including timber and wood chip, none of which is suitable for a trading estate. We work a lot of nights, looking after and making safe roadside woodlands and trees, and cutting grass on busy roads. We need access 24/7 for agricultural machines. We've been unable to find a yard that is suitable for our unique needs and have been looking for nearly 10 years. We know this yard can provide everything we need without causing any upset to anyone, because we've been using it for 3 years and have never had a single complaint. Everyone local to it has been positive and supportive to us. The yard itself has been previously developed. It was used as part of a brickworks, and then it was a builder's yard for the building of the A30. It also had a building on it until the A30 was built. There are still large areas of stone surface, and if you break the surface pretty much anywhere, you'll find broken bricks or scrap. The yard really is well screened and has a massive tarmac entrance already. We strongly believe we've robustly demonstrated within our application that the yard is well related in scale and form and sustainability to the villages and surrounding rural areas, and does comply with policy E5, a policy which was written to promote the development of small businesses like us. Brickyard Road is a proper road. It does have one small section you can't easily pass large vehicles, but I counted passing paces and there's 13 of them. We drive our tractor trailer in and out daily, and our trucks all go out daily to connect machines to tip off forestry waste. Vehicle movements would hardly change because we're doing them already, and it's never been an issue. Our site was chosen because of its location and closeness to other commercial premises which have been allowed planning, even with the departure from planning policy. The yard location really is sustainable, both in terms of getting employees to the yard and then to work from the yard. It's so central to us, and it's perfect access for public transport, cycling and vehicle sharing. All
30
of which,
seconds remaining.
thank you. The use of the yard area we use now near Alscombe is about to come to an end, and we don't have any other alternatives or options for a yard. I really hope you can support what we want to do. Without suitable premises, our future is a big unknown and really could lead to loss of accreditation and loss of employment, and just seems absolutely crazy considering how strong a position we are in currently. Thank you ever so much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Councillor Lawrence, you're the ward member, so you have unlimited time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is a sort of a small up and coming company. They're doing their very best to build and take on more staff. The problem is that the work they do is not conducive to being on an industrial estate. Otherwise, they'd be there. They do a lot of shredding of bark and twigs and branches and everything else on site, and the noise element is quite high. Where they're working at the moment is a farm at Alscombe, and they have to vacate in about a month's time because their leases run out. And in any event, the site isn't big enough for them. The actual decision by the officers to refuse planning was based on the fact that it's a greenfield site. Now, it wasn't a greenfield site. It was a brickyard and a brickworks. And it says clearly on policy E5 that small-scale economic development in rural areas can take place if new buildings are involved and it's on previously developed land. Well, it was previously developed land, so I can't see any reason why this should be this refusal. The actual Brickyard Road, there are a number of businesses there. There's one huge site occupied by a contractor, and this is going to be screened from the road. I can't see any reason why it should be refused. The applicant has made every opportunity to mitigate any problems that might be seen with people viewing the site or whatever. And I wish to propose that we grant permission for him to continue to use this site.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Howe, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I mean, I must admit, when I first looked at this, when I was covering the patch, I thought, no, it didn't comply with policy or anything else. But then, as with anything, you scratch the surface a bit more. And fundamentally, that's what I ended up with this. This is a growing business. It's an agricultural business, a part of it. It does forestry work. You can't put that in an industrial estate. And then the other choice is plant it in a village. The last thing most villagers would want is a noisy wood chipping machine running or barking machine running beside them and tractors and trailers moving in and out with the forestry works. So to me, it's a big part of it is agricultural. So I think it fits our agricultural policies there. But it is the fact that this isn't a greenfield site. You scratch the surface and there's everything underneath that grass there. it's ridiculous to consider it a greenfield site. It's a brownfield site. It's just the buildings have been removed a number of years ago, but underneath the surface, it's all there still. So to me, I wholeheartedly second this. It makes sense. It does really good. And you've got other businesses like we have Halsey's just up the road as well. Also, under the same scenarios, and we just need to support it. So wholeheartedly support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner, anything new to add?
I can just touch that little button. Yes, I do. And I can remember fighting very hard several years ago for the sawmills, Blampayne sawmills. And you remember this, Blampayne sawmills are in Honiton. And they had to come out of that site for other reasons, expansion and one thing and another. And it's quite a dirty, when you start sawing wood, and many of us would know, it's quite a dirty business and it creates fairly heavy machinery and the likes. And we actually put in an application for just under that bridge, and it's been very, very successful, I might add. Could I have a couple of questions through you, Madam Chair, if I may, to Mr. Hart? And I always find this quite interesting. How did you come, Mr. Hart, how did you come across this site in the first place? And the second question, which I've loaded, so is do you own the site or do you rent the site? But how did you come across it in the first place? I'm only interested to know.
No, it's a slightly strange story. So we
haven't got long.
No, it's all right. I'll be quick. We do the tree surgery for Devon County Council for the highways, and we had a call out on March the 10th, 4 years ago. In that lane, a tree blew down across the road. We went to clear that tree, and in doing so, there's a massive development at the top of the road called Halsey's, and they've got motion sensors. We set the motion sensors off. The owner of Halsey's came out, saw it was us, and we shut the road and what we were doing, and said, "Oh, it's you, no problem, thank you very much." So I said, "I absolutely love what you've done. Your yard, it must make your business. It's a dream come true and something I'd love to achieve." And he says, "Hang on a minute, I found another site that's been developed just down the road and it's coming up for sale." And he went and opened up and got me a business card there and then. And I rang the chap that owned it on the Monday. And a year later, after lots and lots of negotiations, we bought it. So that was how we found it, and we do own it.
Wow, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, wow, what a story. And that to me is the sort of things that's the maketh of man and maketh of business. I commend you, Mr. Hart, and what you've done, and I commend the business that you're doing. The point I'm trying to make is, and I think you made it earlier, is that when you do have these businesses, it's been made by other members, very difficult through a planning process, a policy process to say, oh, and by the way, within our planning policy process, what we need to do is have a couple, 2 or 3, half a dozen obscure sites hither and thither, and we'll put that in our planning policy. Do we do that? No, of course we don't, because all it would do is encourage somebody to come along to that site. So we have to what we call evolve, and we have to sometimes let these things come forward as they come forward. Absolutely do I understand our officers and the way that they've come to this with a recommendation of refusal, because it actually defies a little bit. And Mr. Rose did say what we don't want is people buying corners of fields and actually opening up corners of fields and having development, sporadic development spread everywhere. This isn't sporadic development. This is something that I believe, and I'm very much supportive of what Mr. Hart is doing. I'm very supportive of what the ward member, Councillor Lawrence, has suggested, and Councillor Howe has suggested, and gone along and have a look. And isn't it interesting, Councillor Howe comes from Cliff St Mary out to Brickyard Lane and just has a look and scratches under the surface and finds out what's going on, and it's something I'm very much going to be supporting. So Mr. Hart, you'll be having my support in this application, and I just need to make sure that Mr. Rose is happy, because we've got to keep Mr. Rose happy, of course, because we're going to go against our policies, and he always objects to me going against his policies on a regular basis, that actually we have good grounds through the Councillor Howe and Councillor Lawrence as to why we're going to be breaking our policy and why we're going to be supporting this application. But I can tell you now, I'm 100% behind it. I'm damn sure we can come up with something. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner, and you make a very pertinent point. We should have reasons if this is going to be approved. We need to give reasons. Now then, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't repeat what's been said very eloquently by Councillor Skinner and Councillor Howe. I support this application. I will just remind this committee and in fact the whole council, it's written in our policies to encourage, to do all we can to encourage and develop our rural economy. Now, what could be better than this? A rural industry in a rural economy, and I'd rest my case on there. I think we should support, and I think one of the grounds is the economic benefit outweighs that minor aspect of our policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Key.
Chairman. Yes, I mean, you can't say that's an attractive site, can you really? I mean, there's a great pylon there right in the front there. So, you know, I mean, they are sort of going to make use of a brownfield piece there. In actual fact, the company is in my ward at the moment, and the yard that they've got, I mean, you got to jump to swing a cat. And I mean, what they want to do and what they're looking forward to doing, they sort of deserve every encouragement. And by moving to here, we'll give them that ability to be able to expand and have a much bigger site.
Thank you. Councillor Whibley.
Yeah, completely agree with what's been said by most people. Can we just, I don't know, I'm kind of still at that stage where I'm learning things about all of this. With this debate as to whether or not it's a greenfield or a brownfield, I mean, it appears to be a brownfield site. There's not any official classification of that we would be going against if we, I guess that's a question for Mr. Rose, I guess.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Mr. Rose, would you like to reply?
Yeah, I don't think there's not an issue here if members, which you have, want to decide that they class this piece of land here as brownfield and to use that as part justification, along with the fact that it's partly an agricultural and forestry business, and the fact that the economic benefits here outweigh any other policy position. So that's fine.
Thank you. Right, and over to Mrs. Shaw then to sum up, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask, as this is a member overturning of officer's recommendation, that conditions be delegated to officers in consultation with the chair and ward members, if any are required, if the proposer and seconder would accept that.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, that's okay.
Thank you. Members, the motion before you is to grant approval and, as just stated, to delegate to officers in consultation with the chair and ward member any conditions to be applied. Please, when your name is called, would you indicate whether you are in support of the motion to approve, against the motion to approve, or whether you're abstaining from the vote?
Thank you, Mrs. Shaw. Councillor Chamberlain.
I support the motion to approve.
Thank you. Councillor De Sarum.
I support the motion to approve.
Councillor Gazzard.
Support.
Councillor Howe.
Support.
Councillor Key.
Support.
Councillor Lawrence.
Support.
Councillor Pratt.
Support.
Councillor Whibley. No, sorry, Councillor Skinner.
Oh, I nearly thought I was the invisible man. Support.
Councillor Whibley.
No chance of that, Councillor Skinner. Support.
Councillor Ragg.
Support.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Wright.
Support.
Thank you. The vote to approve has been carried.
But you never be the silent man.
Right, thank you, members. That brings our meeting to an end, and I would like to thank everyone, including any members of the public watching online, for taking part. I would particularly like to thank Wendy and her team for setting this up. I know it's been a bit of a headache today, and it seems totally unnecessary to me. Can I just remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live. Until then, your comments will be live to the public. Thank you all for attending. See you next Monday.